concluded. We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister inform the House where there are fuel supply shortages in Australia?
The call to the Prime Minister.
As the Leader of the National Party has said just yesterday, and a very good interview, the big message for every Australian is don't panic. The suppliers are there. We all have a role to play in that. Stick to our normal daily operations and schedules and don't think that we have to always keep topping up. Not to be outdone, Senator John O'Donoghue said today, when asked about refinery issues and energy security, he said, "I will say I do accept that successive governments have let Australia down. It hasn't just happened over the last 4 years. This is decades in the making." And indeed, there were 6 refineries when government changed in 2013. When they left office, there were 2. So 2/3 of them shut down.
Order. The Prime Minister will pause. The Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
It goes to Standing Order 104, direct relevance. Very specific question. If you don't know where the problem
Resume
is,
your seat. Just going to remind the Manager not to give additional information. The Prime Minister was asked where fuel supply shortages, where there are fuel supply shortages in Australia. He is answering the question with order. The Leader of the Opposition with quotes and comments, which all Prime Ministers have done for a long time, and he's talking about the issue of fuel supply. So he is being directly relevant, but he was asked a fairly broad question, and maybe the Prime Minister will provide order. Prime Minister can provide further information to the House.
Speaker, I'm asked about where fuel supplies are, and I'll tell you where they're not. They're in the 4 refineries that shut on their watch. That's the whole point. That's the whole point here. 4 out of 6. I'll tell you where they're not also, Mr Speaker. They're not in Texas, which is where they had their fuel security under this minister. Now, Australia is fuel secure right now.
Order.
We have as much fuel coming in through our ports now as we did before the war in the Middle East began. Retailers should certainly not be using events in the Middle East to price gouge Australians. And any retailer that makes false or misleading statements to consumers about the reasons that their prices have increased is in breach of Australian consumer law. Now, we've given the ACCC new powers to act on this and increased competition and consumer law penalties 5-fold, up to $50 million. We'll continue to work to ensure that we have the fuel that we need, protecting families and primary producers so they can fill up their cars and so they can keep their farms operating.
Order. Give a call to the Honourable Member for Menzies.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. What actions has the Australian government taken in response to the conflict in the Middle East, including humanitarian assistance?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Menzies for his question and for his representation, particularly of Iranian Australians during what is a very difficult time. Now, the first priority of our government is to keep Australians safe. We've taken action to help ensure that safety. This morning I announced that Australia will contribute to the collective defence of Gulf nations under attack from Iran, deploying an E-7A Wedgetail aircraft to the region and providing a number of advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles to the United Arab Emirates. This is a defensive weapon. This is all about protecting civilians in the region, but also, of course, many of those civilians are Australians, including 24,000 of them in the UAE alone. The conflict is volatile and Australians in the region remain at risk, which is why we say to Australians who are offered a trip home, please take up the opportunity which is there. Since the 4th of March, more than 2,600 Australians have returned on 18 flights. A further 4 flights are scheduled to depart for Australia later today. Mr Speaker, I can also confirm that late last night the Australian government issued 5 humanitarian visas to members of the Iranian women's soccer team. Australians stand in solidarity with these brave women. They are safe in Australia and they should feel at home here. Very early this morning I also spoke with President Donald Trump on this matter, and I thank him for his concern for the athletes and for the United States' support for our actions. This is a very delicate situation for these women. Their decisions have not been made lightly, and we have made it clear that if there are other members of the team who make a decision to ask for support, they will receive it from Australia. The conflict in the Middle East remains volatile. Its impact spread not just across the region, but of course have an impact on the global economy. Our government remains focused and determined to respond to these issues, working proactively in the national interest to make sure that Australians are kept safe wherever possible, and we'll do whatever we can to ensure that that continues.
To associate his remarks on indulgence, the Leader.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I associate the opposition with the words of the Prime Minister with respect to deployment of capability in the Middle East and also the asylum seekers? It is a brutal regime in Iran, and we stand side by side with our allies against that regime to support both humanitarian interests and economic interests of our great country. We also support the decision of the government on the asylum seekers. As always, with seeking applications for asylum, it should be consistent with Australian law and in our national interest, but we support the decision made by the government.
I thank the Leader. Give the call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thanks, Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Industry is required under current laws to provide the Department of Climate Change and Energy with detailed weekly updates on fuel stock levels across the country. Can the Minister advise the House where there are fuel supply shortages in Australia?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question. And it is true, of course, that in rural and regional Australia, people are finding it difficult to get diesel in particular, Mr Speaker, and there are many instances of that, Mr Speaker, and it's a very serious matter and it should be dealt with.
Pause. I don't know why the member for Fisher thinks he's the only person who can be continually interjecting non-stop. Did it? Well, you definitely now will be leaving the chamber when I'm addressing the House, and I thought as a former Speaker you would be appreciative when the Speaker is addressing the House not to interrupt so rudely. The Minister was asked a question. The manager was heard in silence. The same courtesy is going to be shown to the Minister as well. The Minister continue.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And as I was saying, there are real pressures in rural and regional Australia in particular. For example, the Minister for Agriculture, Transport and Minister for Industry and I just convened a very important meeting with key stakeholders. The head of the Service Stations Agency informed us that they have seen demand increase in Mildura, for example, by 100% at their service stations, and in the Adelaide Hills and Barossa by 280%. Now, Mr Speaker, I think most reasonable people would understand that puts pressure on supply chains. When demand goes up so much, it puts huge pressure on supply chains. But it can also be the case, and it is also the case, that fundamentally Australia's fuel security is good because of the minimum stock obligations that we have put in place. And I can report to the House that petrol and diesel and jet fuel have continued to be received in Australia, as we would expect in recent days, and that the industry expects that to continue for the foreseeable future. Now, none of that is to say, as we have all said, that there aren't real risks in the supply chain with a crisis in the Middle East at the moment into the future. That's why we've taken the action we have. That's why the National Oil Supply Oil Supplies Emergency Committee, which I'm advised met once during the Ukraine crisis, has met 3 times in the last week at the instigation of this government, Mr Speaker. And it is incumbent on all of us. It is incumbent on all of us to be to be aware of the facts and to convey the facts. And the Prime Minister paid tribute to the Leader of the Nationals, and I agree. He has said there's no case for panic buying because panic buying makes the situation worse. I do need to tell the House, Mr. Speaker, that is not the case for everyone. That is not the case for everyone. I regret to inform the House that in just the last little period, the Deputy Premier of Queensland has intervened in the debate in an irresponsible, dishonest fashion for which he should be ashamed. He said, I've seen Chris Bowen get up in the last couple of days and go, well, we've got enough supply to last 30 days. Well, that was 9 days ago. You know, we're now 10 or 11 days into that 32-day supply. Now, either he doesn't understand how the law works or he has deliberately misled Australians and engaged in encouraging panic buying, because the minimum stock obligation by law cannot be accessed until I agree it should be, as the Energy Minister, Mr. Speaker. Now, either the Deputy Premier of Queensland doesn't know that, didn't bother to find out, or he just chose to play politics. This is an international crisis, not an economic opportunity or a political opportunity. Now, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work, as we have done over recent days and since the Iran crisis began, with the industry. We will engage in full information for the Australian people. We will not, like the Deputy Premier of Queensland, engage in irresponsible, dishonest tactics.
Call to the honourable member for Deakin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese government supporting Gulf countries in their defence against Iran's reprisal and escalatory attacks?
The call to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence.
Well, can I thank the member for his question? At the request of the United Arab Emirates, today the government has announced that we will be deploying an E-7A Wedgetail aircraft to the Gulf to help in the defence of the UAE and the other countries of the Gulf against attacks from Iran. From the very beginning of this conflict, the UAE and 10 other countries in the region have been under sustained attack by Iran without ever having been protagonists against Iran themselves. Indeed, from the very outset, Iran has sought to widen this conflict and attack its neighbours simply because it can, and Australia condemns this in the strongest possible terms. Over the course of the weekend, I was able to speak to a number of my counterparts in the region, including Prince Khalid bin Salman, the Defence Minister of Saudi Arabia, Dr Jafar Hassan, the Prime Minister and Defence Minister of Jordan, and of course Mohammed al-Mazroui, the Defence Minister of the UAE. And I was very pleased to be able to make this offer to Minister al-Mazroui, and he in turn was deeply grateful on behalf of the UAE. Today, the UAE is really one of our closest friends. It is home to 24,000 Australians, one of the largest expat communities that we have anywhere in the world, and for many, many years now it has hosted an operational headquarters of the ADF at the Al Minhad Air Base near Dubai. And for this, we are deeply thankful. And so, as soon as there was a call for assistance, we were very keen to do all that we could. Now, the E-7 is one of the most exquisite airborne command and long-range reconnaissance capabilities in the world, and we are one of the leading E-7 operators in the world. And so, as such, our capability has been in high demand. Over the last couple of years, it has deployed twice to Europe in support of Ukraine, first in Germany and last year in Poland, and the job that it will be doing in the Gulf is very similar. This will be for an initial deployment of 4 weeks involving 85 personnel. The aircraft will leave Australia today, and we are hopeful that it will be operational by the end of the week. Now, in addition to this, and again at the request of the UAE, we are providing a number of advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles. I want to stress that these are defensive weapons by their nature, and indeed the strategic intent in all the assistance that we are giving is to provide for the defence of the countries of the Gulf, countries which are home to thousands of Australians and countries with whom we enjoy a deep, close and enduring friendship.
Before I call the member for Bradfield, I'm very pleased to inform the House the President in the front row of the Speaker's Gallery today are Australian Olympic Committee representatives as well as medalists from the Milano Cortina 2026 Winter Olympics, including Ian Chesterman, AM AOC President, Alyssa Camplin-Warner, AM, Chef de Mission of the Australian Winter Olympic Team, and especially Cooper Woods, the gold medalist for the men's moguls, and Danielle Scott, silver medalist when women's aerials. Welcome home and welcome to Question Time. Give the call to the honourable member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the very busy and important Minister for Climate Change and Energy. From COVID to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and yet another war in the Middle East, rolling geopolitical crises continuously threaten global fuel supplies. Here at home, the fuel tax credit scheme, our $11 billion per annum federal subsidy of diesel, fuels our addiction to dirty, expensive and unreliable liquid fuels. Why does the government insist on jeopardising our national energy security by keeping miners, farmers and motorists hooked on taxpayer-funded, artificially cheap and unreliable diesel?
Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her question. And can I say that in this environment, the government's first priority and the first obligation and duty is to ensure the fuel security for the traditional liquid fuels that we all rely on, and an honourable member is nodding, and I think we would all agree on that. And that is what we're doing, and I've outlined, and I may have other opportunities over the next hour to outline everything we're doing and will continue to do, Mr Speaker. Effectively, the honourable member points to the fact also that moving to more renewable energy makes us less reliant on the fossil fuel supply chain internationally, and that is correct. That is why we're doing things like the $1.1 billion fund to see more Australian manufacturing of low-carbon liquid fuels, for example. That is our policy. That is our policy. And I saw the member for Mallee the other day say, we've got so much canola, why are we sending it overseas to be processed? We should do more of that in Australia. What a good idea, Mr Speaker. What a good idea. And that is what our policy does. And that is what we announced, the $1.1 billion fund to do just that, because it's good for Australian farmers and it's good for the environment and it's good for everyone. It didn't happen under the previous government, and we have begun the process of it happening. The Treasurer, the Minister for Transport and I have begun that process. Now, Mr Speaker, in relation also to fossil fuels and the energy system, for example, I'm pleased with the fact that, for example, in the last energy crisis in Ukraine, in that summer, we used in our energy grid 2.7 terawatt-hours of gas. The equivalent figure for this summer is 1.5 terawatt-hours of gas. Now, that is good for emissions, of course, but it also means we are less reliant on those on the impacts. It still will have an impact. The gas price will still, international gas price will still have an impact on Australia, no doubt, but a little bit less. So, Mr Speaker, our policy in relation to the diesel fuel rebate hasn't changed. It does provide support for farmers in particular in relation to their farm operations. But what we will do is continue with the sorts of policies that we are implementing, like the $1.1 billion Cleaner Fuel Fund and the transition of our energy system to more renewables, which is the cheapest form of energy, is not dependent on global supply chains. I mean, Vladimir Putin cannot interrupt the supply of sun to Australia, and the international circumstance in the Middle East cannot interrupt the flow of wind in Australia. So that is a reliable form of energy. We on this side of the House get it. I think many in the crossbench get it. Those opposite, less so.
The call to the honourable member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. What actions has the Albanese Labor government taken in relation to members of the Iranian women's football team?
Minister for Home Affairs and the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Speaker. And I want to thank the member for Bennelong, a real champion in this place for Australians of Iranian heritage. And today, as a parliament, as a nation, we stand in solidarity with them. Last night, I was able to tell 5 members of the Iranian women's football team that they are welcome to stay in Australia, that they are safe here and they should feel at home here. There's been a lot of work going on in recent days to make sure we gave these women every possible opportunity to seek assistance if they wanted it. Once it was made clear that there were 5 women who wanted to stay in Australia, They were moved to a safe location by the Australian Federal Police, and last night I met with them at that location. Before I signed off on their visas, I spoke with Mike Burgess, the Director-General of ASIO, to make sure that there were no security concerns, and then spoke to the Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police, Chrissy Barrett, to make sure that we had the appropriate measures in place to ensure the safety of these women. At around 9:15 last night, when I was with them, I signed off on their applications to go onto humanitarian visas, and I asked the department to process it as quickly as they could. They went back to the offices and processed it immediately, finishing the processing at around 1:30 a.m. this morning. I also want to thank the Australian media for the way that they have handled this issue. One of the challenges at times like this, it's not only the Australian people who are listening. The people who would want to harm these women or make it more difficult for them to communicate with our officials are always listening too. Any public messaging that would have led to it being more difficult for the women to access our officials would have made them less safe, not more. I also want to acknowledge the Shadow Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Duniam, for his cooperation in making sure that we were handling this issue that particular way. All of this has been possible as well because of the extraordinary efforts of the team at the Department of Home Affairs, and I want to acknowledge their work. Australia, as a nation, have taken the Iranian women's soccer team into our hearts. I think when everybody saw the swapping of jerseys with the Matildas, we all felt we were there in that moment too. I say to the other members of the team who have not yet made this decision, the same opportunity is here for you if that's what you want. Once everything had been signed off last night, there were lots of photos, lots of celebrating, and then a spontaneous outcry of Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi from the newest Australian residents. These women are great athletes, great people, and I say to them on behalf of the government, on behalf of the parliament, and I suspect on behalf of the whole nation, to them, welcome home.
Call to the honourable member for Parkes.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Transwest Fuels is an independent wholesale supplier in Gunnedah and Mungandai in my electorate. Normally, it services more than 2,000 agricultural customers. They have now been turned away by their usual bulk fuel supplier in both New South Wales and Queensland, and have no certainty that they can secure enough fuel for businesses or the farms they support. What action is the Minister taking to fix Australia's fuel supply storage?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question. As I outlined in my previous answer, yes, in regional Australia there are real pressures on supply chain. So I am sure that the facts that the honourable member has put are correct. And I am sure that that is something that other companies in a similar situation are experiencing. That's why we have convened 3 meetings of the National Oil Emergency Supply Committee, which is an important committee, which every state and territory is represented on. In addition, the relevant ministers and I have convened all the key stakeholders, including the National Farmers.
Order. I'm not really prepared to take the point of order because the minister was answering directly what action, and he was addressing the House. So it is impossible to take a point of order on relevance because the minister was just updating the House on what actions had been taken, what meetings had occurred, who he had met with. So I gave a decision last week that I would take points of order, but you're pushing the friendship if it's on relevance. So the member for Page has the call.
Speaker, I, with all due respect, the point of order is on relevance because we were asking what action. Meetings aren't action. We want some action, not meetings.
I think everyone heard that point of order and can see for what it was. If the minister is updating the House on his actions that he's taken about a question was asked, that's an abuse of the standing orders. He was updating the House on who he was meeting with about the issue the member for Parkes had asked him about. He couldn't have been more directly relevant. No one thinks that's anything other than the case. As I said, if this continues, I will simply not take points of order. I just won't take them, and the minister will continue. So that is in your hands, those people who take points of order. Minister, in continuation.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. We met with the NFF, Trucking Australia, Fertiliser Australia, the peak group of service stations in Australia, the Australian Institute of Petroleum. And I did say to every single person on that call, is there any government action that you would like to ask us four ministers for today? Because if you ask for it, we will take it if we can. And the most common response to that, Mr Speaker, was this: please ensure Australians understand there is no need for panic buying because it is that which is causing the pressure. It is that which is causing. That's what the NFF said. That's what the NFF said. That's what the other peak groups said. Order. And that's what we are doing. It is the case. There are pressures on supply chains. Well, the Leader of the Opposition interjects, Mr Speaker, saying just move the supplies around. Just move the supplies around. Well, you had 4 refineries closed while the Leader of the Opposition, while the member for Hume was the Minister for Energy. We saw in that period of government 4 refineries closed, which made moving the supplies around just that little bit harder, Mr Speaker, when that happened. I can say to the House, in terms of action, that, as the House knows, the minimum stock obligation requirements are collected weekly but have only been reported quarterly. I have instructed that during this period of heightened uncertainty and concern, those figures will now be reported weekly. They will now be reported weekly. That is a regime which is appropriate in this situation. I haven't heard the Leader of the Opposition weeks ago say it should be done weekly. We have done that. I haven't even called today for it to be done weekly. We have done that. We have done that, and that is appropriate policy action to take.
Call to the honourable member for McEwen.
My question is to the Treasurer. What impact is the conflict in the Middle East having on the global economy, and how is Australia placed to deal with these challenges?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Speaker. I really appreciate the member for McEwen's question, but also his focus on the impacts in real communities like his of what we're seeing around the world right now. The escalation of the conflict in the Middle East has been dramatic, and so has its impact on the global economy. We are seeing a great deal of volatility play out on markets for equities, commodities, currencies and bonds, and also in risk indexes. Markets were especially pessimistic over the last couple of days, but they've rebounded substantially so far today in reaction to some comments from President Trump. The most significant impacts have been on energy prices, including oil. Oil was trading just under $90 before question time, but it got up to almost $120 a barrel yesterday. It was about $60 at the start of the year and $73 at the start of this conflict, to give people a sense of the scale of the increase. Now, this sort of volatility, and especially on energy markets, puts upward pressure on global inflation at the same time as the conflict weighs on global growth. The longer this drags out, the more serious the economic consequences. Now, Mr Speaker, we did have an inflation challenge before these developments risk making it worse. We will update our inflation forecasts in the budget in the usual way. But we also need to remember that we have very substantial advantages and very solid economic foundations in this country. We are not immune from what's happening around the world, and we are not complacent, but we are very well placed as a country and as an economy, and that's my main message today. Last week's national accounts showed we had stronger economic growth than any major advanced economy. We've got low unemployment. We've got higher participation. We've got stronger jobs growth and lower debt as a proportion of our economy than the major advanced economies as well. We have one of the most robust and best regulated financial systems in the world, and the Council of Financial Regulators has been meeting daily to stay across developments on markets. We have large stockpiles of fuel, and the ministers are engaging with primary industries to stay across the pressures in those industries as well. We've empowered the ACCC to police the service stations and issue on-the-spot fines if necessary, and we've increased the maximum penalties 5 times to $50 million, and we're prepared to take other responsible steps if necessary. So, Mr Speaker, we do have a lot going for us, but a lot coming at us as well. We will continue to work through these developments to make sure that our people and our economy are as resilient as possible in the face of all of this global economic volatility and uncertainty.
Call to the honourable member for Monash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Last week, the Minister stated that he has, quote, great confidence that energy companies will not be taking advantage of Australia's fuel crisis. Today, it's reported that fuel prices are up 40 cents a litre. Can the minister advise the House where there are fuel supply shortages in Australia and what he is doing to fix it?
Called to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I think I've outlined to the House that there are diesel shortages being faced in rural and regional Australia in particular in the face of massive spikes in demand. Now, that desire by people to get diesel is understandable, particularly when there's some misinformation out there about Australia's fuel supplies. It is understandable. But it is very important that we all communicate that the biggest risk to fuel availability in Australia right now is panic buying. That is the biggest risk, Mr Speaker. That is why when we see increases in demand for fuel in the Adelaide Hills and Barossa of 238%, of course service stations and providers are going to find difficulty in meeting that demand. 100% in Mildura, for example. Of course that's the case. It's also the case we need to be very honest with people, Mr Speaker. Stockpiling fuel in a property is not an undertaking without risks, Mr Speaker, and it's also very important that we send that message as well. So they ask what we are doing about it. What we are doing about it is working with the industry, and by industry I mean industries across the board, with the refiners, the two that we have left in Australia, Mr Speaker, not the 6 that the previous government inherited. We had the member for Hume denying that foreclosed while he was the Energy Minister, but the facts speak for themselves now, Mr Speaker.
A minute. The Leader of the Opposition will withdraw that comment. Just if allow the manager just to step away for a moment.
I withdraw.
Thank you, Leader, to assist the House. The manager.
I'm the Leader of the Opposition. Wants her to talk. Is more than welcome.
You're now pushing the friendship. What is your point of order? What is your point of order?
Goes to relevance. It was a very direct question. Where are the fuel supply shortages and what are you doing to fix it?
And the Minister is answering directly those two questions in his answer. He identified the areas of Australia that have fuel shortages and he's explaining to the House exactly what he's doing. Cease the frivolous points of order. He's updating the House exactly about what he is doing. His words are, this is what the actions are. This is now getting beyond. And the manager, I'll reiterate, if this continues any more today, no more points of order will be taken. And I've got examples of where that has happened time and time again. Minister, in continuation.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And again, as I indicated, ministers convened important peak groups earlier today and asked them what actions it would be helpful for the government to take. And the National Farmers Federation and the other groups said the most important single government action you can provide is reassurance that Australia's fuel supplies are secure. That is the most important action we can take. That's what the NFF, if you care about what they think, and the other peak groups said to us. So we will continue to do that. We'll continue to work with industry. If honourable members have particular issues that they wish to raise with me, and companies whose concerns they want to bring to my attention, as some honourable members know, my door is open to them, and I will take their concerns and I will see what can be done in cooperation with the industry, because that is a sensible approach. There have been several members opposite who have been through my doors, and they're always welcome if they want to raise issues in good faith.
Give a call to the member for Paterson.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. How is the Albanese Labor government working with farmers to manage the impact of the conflict in the Middle East on agriculture? And what steps is the Albanese Labor government taking to improve food security?
Give a call to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. And I do want to thank our member for Paterson for chairing the committee that actually wrote a report on Australia's food security, and indeed for her keeping ministers up to date on what's happening in her regional community over the weekend. Because I think everybody in this place, in this building, understands the importance of ensuring our farmers can continue to produce our food and our fibre, Mr Speaker. We also understand that keeping our freight and supply chains moving is critical. And as a government, we know that this food production is critical for every community right across Australia, and that we actually can produce about 2.5 times the food we need. We also, of course, do feed our close neighbours in the Indo-Pacific with our world-class agricultural products, and we need to be able to continue to do that too. From day one of this conflict in the Middle East, we have been monitoring the potential impacts on our ag industry. Indeed, we're working day and night with our agricultural exporters to ensure the safe return of products that have been disrupted due to the conflict. We also recognise how critical the supply of fuel and fertiliser is for agriculture and for our food security. That's why our government is working together with the farmers, the producers and industry so that we can quickly respond to issues as they do arise. We have been very clear, and I reiterate, the conflict in the Middle East is not a commercial opportunity. Indeed, we must all act in the national interest during this period of time, because we know that keeping our farmers farming is in the national interest, Mr Speaker. As the Minister for Energy has indicated, our government did hold a roundtable today with the National Farmers Federation, Fertiliser Australia, the Australian Institute of Petroleum and the Australian Trucking Association, by all joining together because now more than ever, collaboration really is critical at this point. Of course, this builds on discussions that many of us have had over the last week with our broader sectors and industries. As the Energy Minister has also reiterated, we have more fuel now than at any time over the last 15 years. We know that fuel continues to arrive in the quantities and the frequency that we need, with more shipments due within the week. It's also critical that our fuel industry continues to deliver a consistent supply across our economy, including to our regional communities. We have heard some concerns today from people about some of those regional communities that have been impacted, as the Minister for Energy has indicated and other members have indicated. But we've also heard that much of the input products for the upcoming planting season, including the majority of the fertiliser required, is already on the water or is already in the country, Mr Speaker. Farmers are rightly looking ahead and they are planning, and we understand the importance of fuel and fertiliser to a productive food system, which is why we're also making sure we've got supply chain resilience as a key priority of our national food security strategy. This strategy will help safeguard Australia into the future. On this side of the House, we'll continue to stand with our farmers.
I call the Leader of the Nationals. I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is a group of exchange students hosted by Rotary Clubs Australia 8th District 9685 as guests of the members for Macquarie, Robertson, Bennelong and Bradfield. Give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Nationals.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Based in Allegra, Queensland, independent fuel distributor Bartrans Petroleum are receiving just 10% of their normal fuel volumes. In their words, this is affecting all distributors. Some smaller distributors have no allocation. Our focus is the very critical agriculture sector. Crops need harvesting, crops need planting. Minister, when can the farmers of Allegra expect to have their normal fuel supplies return?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the Honourable the Leader of the Nationals for the question. And for those farmers and for the other farmers who are experiencing difficulties getting diesel, I can say this very clearly. The difficulties you are experiencing are not currently as a result of a lack of fuel coming to our country. Not as a result of a lack of fuel coming to our country. We have received supplies in recent days, as we would expect to, and obviously we keep a close eye with the industry on what ships are on their way to Australia, and those ships are continuing to arrive. That's the point we are making. Fundamentally, Australia's fuel security is strong. That is the point we are making. That is why there is no need for people to panic buy or to order 100 or 200% of what they normally order, which is what the Service Stations Association told us was happening across the country. Now, the honourable member asked when can they expect fuel supplies. Well, the answer to that is we will continue to work with the industry, with all industries, to ensure that these pressures on the fuel supply are dealt with as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. And I say very clearly to the Leader of the Nationals, if he has a good faith idea he wants to put forward, he is welcome to. and I will listen to it, Mr Speaker. The only idea we've heard so far from the opposition is that I should require more reporting from service stations. That is that they want a very earnest report, Mr Speaker, is what they want. Now, I've already indicated that I have issued an instruction that the MSO should now be updated weekly, not quarterly. And reporting is important. The Petroleum and Other Fuels Reporting Act 2017 has been in operation since then. I did require more reporting when we came to office in 2022. And if there is more sensible reporting that actually helps, then I'll do that as well. But I'll also weigh that against the burden of compliance on service stations and the paper. I would have thought, the party opposite would want me to weigh that up. Say, are these extra reporting that we might ask service stations and small distributors to undertake, is that a helpful addition to the information? I'll weigh that up against the reporting burden for small and medium-sized businesses.
Give the call to the honourable member for Jagga.
Thank you. My question is to the Prime Minister. How has the Albanese Labor government been delivering on its commitment to build Australia's future, invest in our people and deliver real, lasting cost of living relief? What are the risks?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Jagga for her question, and I thank her for the visit that we had to the Repat Hospital there, speaking to veterans about the difference that our investment in Veterans Affairs has made to the speedy processing of applications and the clearing off the queue, which is what we inherited from those opposite. I said when I went to the National Press Club after the election that this year would be concentrating on a year of delivery in that 1 year after May the 3rd, ticking off our commitments one by one, delivering real cost of living relief, investing in our people and building Australia's future. And that is what we have been doing. 132 urgent care clinics are open around Australia right now. We promised 50 originally, we delivered 87, then we promised another 50, and there's another 45 of those 50 are open. And there are 5 more to open coming up. Darwin, Whyalla, Cairns, Caloundra and Coburg, Mr Speaker. Because we deliver on our commitments. They promised to close them, we're opening them. That's the difference. We promised record investment in bulk billing, rates are up over 80%, more than 3,400 GP clinics now bulk bill every patient, every visit. We promised to cut the cost of PBS medicines, and now they're down to the same price they were in 2004. We promised to strengthen Medicare, and we are delivering it. We promised tax cuts for every taxpayer, and because we were re-elected, that will happen on July 1, and another tax cut the following July 1 as well. We've delivered landmark, game-changing funding agreements for both schools and hospitals, delivering on the Gonski principles of making sure that every student gets valued and can fulfil their potential, but also delivering a 5-year hospital agreement with record funding. We promised paid prac for student, nurses, teachers, midwives and social workers, and they're getting it. We promised free TAFE, something that those opposite said they wouldn't value, and 750,000 Australians are getting the skills that they need through free TAFE. We've been getting on with delivering. Those opposite have just stood in the way, too busy fighting each other to bother with fighting for Australians. There's more to do. We'll continue to work each and every day to make a positive difference to the lives of Australians.
Call to the honourable member for Curtin.
My question's for the Treasurer. My constituents are deeply concerned about how artificial intelligence is reshaping our economy and society. Our National AI Plan adopts a largely hands-off posture and leaves all risks up to an AI Safety Institute with 1/16 of the annual funding of its UK counterpart. Comparable nations are moving faster to set clear standards, support innovation and manage risks. Will the upcoming budget include further investment in AI opportunities and safety to ensure Australians, rather than overseas tech companies, shape our future?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you to the honourable member for her question. which builds a bit on the question that the member for Wentworth asked me last week as well. Obviously, AI is a transformational technology, but we have a responsibility which we embrace, not just to maximise the economic upside of AI, but to also minimise the risks. And some of those risks and some of those concerns, I think, are accurately captured in the question that the member has asked. And while I agree that there is a level of concern in the community about AI, about our ability to manage and minimise those risks, I don't accept that the government's AI plan has been silent or unnecessarily focused on the challenges that the honourable member raises. We have made a commitment to robust legal, regulatory and ethical frameworks. We are engaging internationally to protect rights and build trust so that we can deal with some of the issues that the member has raised. Last week I made special mention of Minister Ayres and Assistant Minister Charlton, but I also want to shout out the Attorney-General, who also does a heap of work in this space as well, particularly when it comes to the copyright issues. And so this Cabinet, this government, this side of the House is very focused on the risks of AI. Now, when it comes to budget commitments, we haven't finalised the budget yet. You wouldn't have expected us to in the middle of March or early in March. We finalised the budget in the first half of May. But what the honourable member can always expect from this government is to be very attentive to the concerns that people raise with us, so that we can do whatever we can to capture the opportunities and spread the benefits, but also keep Australians safe.
Call to the member for Petrie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to provide more social and affordable homes for those Australians who need it most? Is the Minister aware of any risks that in the government's plans?
Give a call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Petrie for her question. Speaker, we've got a really big housing challenge confronting our country, and one of the most important things that governments across the nation need to be doing right now is rebuilding our stock of social and affordable housing. Speaker, in the member for Petrie's electorate, we're building 330 new social and affordable homes. That's 330 on the pathway to 55,000 homes that we will build across the country. Now, Speaker, at the heart of this program is the Housing Australia Future Fund. This is a generational investment in social and affordable housing that our government is so proud to be making. A few weeks ago, I visited a completed Housing Australia Future Fund project in the member for Petrie's electorate with her and Senator Mulholland from the other place. Now, Speaker, in my role, my second favourite thing that I get to do is visit construction sites and see how our home building program is progressing. But my absolute favourite thing that I get to do is speak to people who are in homes that our government has built. Speaker, I met 3 wonderful older women who call this Redcliffe site home, Lyndall, Margot and Marika. And these women were kind enough to sit down with us and tell us the story of how they got into precarious housing and the meaning that this has had on their lives to be out of that situation. Marika told us about a period of her life where she was being pushed from rental to rental until she reached a period of sheer desperation. Speaker, her lease in private rental was coming to an end because her landlord wanted to lift her rent again. She had recently taken on the primary care role for her ex-husband, who was very ill, and she was at a point where she just did not know where to go. Now, Speaker, she told us that she was seriously contemplating a future where she would be living in her car while caring for someone who is bound to a wheelchair. That was until, Speaker, she was able to make contact with a community housing provider who got her into a Housing Australia Future Fund home, and her life has completely changed because of this. She talked about the deep feelings that she feels of relief, Speaker, to be in stable housing for the first time in many decades. And she talked to us about how she walked through the front door of her new home every day and felt for the first time, I'm home. Now, Speaker, the life of this woman has been completely changed by housing that our government has built. We're going to do that 55,000 more times around the country. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about risks. We don't have to look too far because they sit opposite us. Speaker, every opportunity those opposite have had to vote against more social and affordable homes for our country, they have taken it. They want to scrap the Housing Australia Future Fund. They oppose the support that we're giving to people to get into their own home. Speaker, our focus is not on squabbling or leadership games. It's delivery of better housing opportunities.
Call to the honourable member for O'Connor.
My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. A potato farmer in Manjimup, Dom, texted me. I rang up Fuels West to order some fuel yesterday. They told me they have no fuel and a 3-week waiting list for deliveries. I have 10 days fuel left. After that, you won't be eating my spuds. Last week, the Minister said our fuel supplies were in good shape. Can the Minister assure Dom, Transwest Fuels and Bartrans Petroleum they will get the fuel they need?
Give a call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. As I said, it can and is the case that there can be real pressures on regional supply of diesel, while our national fuel supply is in very good shape, which is the point the government has been making, and frankly we should all make. We should all make. There's an obligation on all of us, Mr Speaker, including, and the Leader of the Nationals has been doing that, to his credit, saying that we do have good supply of petrol and diesel and jet fuel to Australia, and there is no need for panic buying because it is the massive spikes in demand we are seeing which is causing supply chain constraints, not in an interruption of shipping to Australia. That has not yet occurred. We're alive to the risks, but that has not occurred at this point, Mr Speaker, and we have very strong minimum stock obligation holdings. Now, honourable members opposite interject, what are you doing about it? Well, as I said, so far the opposition has suggested maybe there's a constructive idea coming.
The Manager of Opposition on a point of order.
Goes to direct relevance, Speaker. He was asked a very simple question. Can you assure Dom and the other petroleum providers that they will get the—
Resume your seat. There was a lot in that question regarding the person involved, and the Minister was asked the question about assuring the House, assuring the individual, will they get the fuel that they need? And the Minister's outlining how I think he was about to outline what he is doing regarding those assurances. So I'm just going to make sure that part of the question is being directly relevant. The Manager was correct to raise that point of order. We're just going to make sure the Minister is correct as well in being directly relevant, not talking about any other alternative policies, because he wasn't asked about alternative policies. The Minister in
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Absolutely. And it's difficult to talk about alternative policies when there aren't any, Mr Speaker, because there are no— the constructive ideas that have come forward so far are requiring service stations to fill in more forms. Mr Speaker, what we will continue to do is work with the sector. The group that we convened today will continue to convene weekly, Mr Speaker, which was the rhythm of meetings that was suggested by the peak groups that would be helpful to them. They know that they can contact any minister, including myself, at any time if there's any issues that they need our help to deal with. We'll also continue to convene the National Oil Emergency Supply Committee, which every government, including, I might say, Queensland, is represented on. And again, the Deputy Premier of Queensland might want to acquaint himself with the fact that his officials have been involved in every meeting, and his officials, Mr Speaker, have agreed that the level of alert should be the lowest of the 6 possible when it comes to international petrol supply. Either the Deputy Premier doesn't know that, which is his negligence, or he is choosing to deliberately mislead the people of Queensland and, in effect, encourage panic buying, which means he is behaving abominably and irresponsibly.
Call to the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government making it easier to see a doctor by ensuring we have a strong health workforce?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the member for Gilmore, and congratulations on the delivery of her promise to open a new Medicare urgent care clinic in Nowra. It opened last Thursday, and it's the 132nd urgent care clinic that's been delivered by this government. The member for Gilmore also delivered on her promise to ramp up operations at the existing Batemans Bay Urgent Care Clinic to manage the impact of some changes to the local hospital operations in that town. That's now operating 18 hours a day from 6 a.m. to midnight every single day of the year. And with more than half of her general practices now bulk billing all of their patients all of the time, the member for Gilmore genuinely is delivering a stronger Medicare to the South Coast, and I thank her for that. But a stronger Medicare, Mr Speaker, needs more doctors. And for too long it was simply the case that doctor numbers were not keeping pace with a population that is growing and is getting older. And we've turned that around as well, Mr Speaker. The Education Minister in particular has expanded medical school places to train more young Australians in medicine. Cairns and Launceston now have end-to-end medical training thanks to this government. We delivered the first medical school in the Northern Territory, which is taking its first medical students literally as we speak this year, Mr Speaker. And the Education Minister also approved the expansion of medical school places to 9 other universities starting this year, with more to come in 2028, as I understand it, Mr Speaker. We're also cutting red tape and fees for overseas-trained doctors who want to come to Australia and practice here in this country. And why wouldn't you, Mr Speaker, particularly from countries where we have high confidence in their training, like New Zealand, the UK and Ireland, Mr Speaker. And all of this means there's been a huge increase in the number of newly registered doctors practising in Australia, up by 50% on pre-COVID levels, Mr Speaker. But I've also been clear that I'd like to see more of these young doctors choose a career in general practice, because general practice is the backbone of a strong healthcare, Mr Speaker. And that's why I'm especially pleased that we are seeing record numbers enrolling in general practice as a career. Last year was a record, but we broke that record this year, Mr Speaker, with 2,100 young doctors choosing to enrol in general practice. That's 500 more enrolments every year than we were seeing under the former government, Mr Speaker. And half of them are training outside of the big cities, in communities like the South Coast in New South Wales, Mr Speaker. That's delivering a stronger Medicare.
The call to the honourable member for Calare.
To the Prime Minister. It defies belief that the main access road in and out of the Central West relies on a bridge built by a convict chain gang in the 1830s. The Great Western Highway at Victoria Pass is now closed because, unsurprisingly, that convict bridge has failed. This highway is not fit for purpose. For decades, all the major parties have let us down on access to the city. Just cheap talk, broken promises and small change. Will you apply pressure to and work with the New South Wales Government to finally deliver a genuine expressway through to Sydney?
Give the call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thanks very much. Can I thank the member for Calare for his question and for his consistent raising of this issue on behalf of the people of Calare. As you're aware, you are correct. The Great Western Highway is currently has damage impacting travel along the highway. The New South Wales Government has advised that both lanes of the highway are closed at Victoria Path following defects identified at Mitchell Causeway and what is known as the Convict Bridge. It is an operational matter for the New South Wales Government in terms of trying to get that road reopened. It is a complex geotechnical issue. Engineers, as I understand it, have been on the ground since Thursday, and an abundance of caution is required when issues like this happen. As you are aware, when we came to office, we inherited, frankly, a project which had funded two parts of the highway, but the middle bit, which was not funded at all, would have required an 11-kilometre, $14 billion tunnel under the Blue Mountains. No government is proposing to do that. What the New South Wales Government went and did is another study of the highway to look at where are the projects that sensibly we can work on together We await the New South Wales Government's requests, which we consider in each and every budget in terms of what projects can be done on the Western Highway. But I think the priority right at the moment is the New South Wales Government want to get that road reopened as soon as they possibly can, and we'll work with them on what future projects are required.
Give the call to the honourable member for Brisbane.
Thank you, Speaker. And my question is to the Treasurer. What is the Albanese Labor Government doing to make Australia's super system fairer and more sustainable, and how does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Speaker. The member for Brisbane is an absolute champion for superannuation and also for her local community, and particularly focused on young people and some of the intergenerational issues in our economy. So I appreciate her question today. Because whether it's our approach to wages or tax cuts or superannuation, this government is all about helping Australians earn more, keep more of what they earn, but also retire with more as well. And today's a really important day in that regard, because we welcome the news that our stronger and fairer super bill is likely to pass the parliament tonight without amendment. And we want to thank the Greens for taking a far more constructive approach to this legislation than the approach taken by those opposite. The passage of this bill means a fairer super system from top to bottom. It means we are delivering more super for people with low balances and more sustainable tax breaks for people with the biggest balances. And this is what intergenerational tax reform looks like: a fairer system which maintains concessional treatment across the board but makes those concessions more affordable and more sustainable. Now, a really important part of this legislation is the boost to the low-income super tax offset. It means more super for 1.3 million Australians, mostly women and mostly young people. It means more super for 100,000 sales assistants and 50,000 aged care workers. It could mean a potential benefit of around $15,000 at retirement by one calculation. So, Mr Speaker, this is a test for the Liberals and the Nationals tonight in the Senate. If they vote no to these changes again, they'll be voting for less super for people on low incomes, bigger tax breaks for people with tens of millions of dollars in super, but they'll also be voting for bigger deficits, Mr Speaker. Or they'll be a couple of billion short a year, and they'll try and find that with cuts to Medicare like they always do. They haven't changed a bit and they haven't learned a thing, and they will fail the same test that they failed under the last two opposition leaders. Because whether it's wages, tax cuts or super, they are still the same old Liberals trying to hack away at the pay and retirement incomes of ordinary working people. This side of the House, Mr Speaker, we created superannuation, and we have spent the last 3.5 years strengthening superannuation. The new Shadow Treasurer says that he wants to dismantle compulsory superannuation. We are delivering more super in a stronger, more sustainable system, and the passage of this legislation in the Senate will make that very clear.
Give the call to the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Energy. Plumbers, transport and security businesses in my electorate of Lindsay say their businesses are being impacted by fuel shortages. Aaron of Penrith City Plumbing has a fleet of 3 trucks but has had to take one of those trucks off the road due to fuel shortages. Can the minister assure Aaron there's no fuel shortages in Western Sydney?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. As a Western Sydney resident and MP, I'm concerned about small businesses and residents right across Western Sydney, Mr Speaker, and I'm concerned to ensure that they continue to have access to fuel, and the best way we can do that is to remind people that our fuel supplies are secure and there is no need for panic buying. And we can remind people that because of the actions of this government, we have 2.97 billion litres of diesel in our minimum stock obligations, and we have 1.56 billion litres of petrol in reserve, not called upon, in reserve for if the situation in the Middle East gets worse. And let me say to the House, Mr Speaker, I won't hesitate to release those reserves if necessary. I will not hesitate. If that's what is necessary—
Member for Lindsay has asked—
Are the opposition really calling for us to release those reserves now, Mr Speaker? I invite the opposition to reflect on the responsibility of what they're calling for. So far, all they've called for is me to require service stations to fill in more forms. Service stations to fill in more forms. And the situation remains, with no help from the former Minister for Energy, the member for Hume, that Australia's fuel supplies are secure.
The Minister will pause. The Manager of Opposition Position on a point of order.
Speaker, once again I'm going to have to go to direct relevance. It was a very straightforward, simple question. I know you're under the pump.
Resume your seat. Resume your seat. Order. Members on my right. The Manager. Member for Chifley. The Minister was asked about the impacts on shortages and assurances regarding fuel shortages in Western Sydney. He was updating the House on litres in reserve, addressing that part of the question, and he was taking interjections about releasing some of that fuel and whatnot. So I just want to make sure he is being directly relevant about the individual that he was asked about on behalf of the member for Lindsay as well. The manager was right in raising that point of order, but the Minister is also correct in giving that information to the House. So just making sure he's being directly relevant.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And as I've said previously, if the opposition wants to make a constructive suggestion, we'll listen in good faith if they make the suggestion in good faith, Mr Speaker. And I think I've made very clear the government recognises the pressures. And I do recognise this is a big day, Mr Speaker. The Shadow Member for Wannon asked me his first question this year today, Mr Speaker. He's rustled up the energy to ask me a question. It's a big call for the part-time Shadow Minister for Energy, but I'm glad he's turned up to work today.
Order. Now the House has come to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to increase education for healthcare workers, and how does this strengthen Medicare?
Give the call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Can I thank my friend, the revered member for Robertson, for his question. Mr Speaker, I told the House last week that more Aussies are starting a university degree this year than ever before. And I've got some more good news for you, because this year the number of Australians starting a science degree is up by 8%. The number starting an engineering degree is up by 9%. And that's good because we need more scientists, we need more engineers, but we also need more doctors and more nurses, more health professionals. And so some more good news. The number of Australians doing a pharmacy degree this year is up 3.5%. Dentistry is up 11.5%. Optical science is up 14%. Occupational therapy is up 18.7%. Speech pathology is up 12%. And medicine is up 8%. And as my friend the Health Minister alluded to a moment ago, there's more good news on that front as well. This year we opened a new medical school at Darwin in the north and a new medical school in Launceston in the south. Next year we'll open a new medical school in Queensland as well. And today we've opened applications to train even more doctors at more universities right across the country. What we're announcing today and what we've already announced means that when it's all rolled out, we'll have an extra 1,800 doctors being trained in our universities than we did before we were elected. Triple what the last Liberal government did in half the time. And that's the difference between the Labor Party and the Liberal Party. We see education as an investment. They see it as a cost. We want to strengthen Medicare. They secretly want to sell it.
Order.
Well, you're asking me for a story. I'll give you a story.
Order.
Some more good news. 20,000 young Australian nursing students have now got paid prac. That's real cost of living help, real financial help to get you through your practical training. Now, my overly anxious friends opposite want a story. Here's the story of Samantha. She lives in Bundoora in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. She does her paid prac at the Royal Women's Hospital in the city. Now, that's 2 trains and 1 bus from home. Sometimes she finishes her shift at 10 or 11 o'clock, sometimes midnight. I asked her the other day, what does paid prac mean for you? She said it meant she could afford an Uber. She said it meant peace of mind. She said it meant getting home safe at night. Now, just think about that. Samantha's training to do one of the most important jobs in the world. Getting her home safe is the least we can do.
Of course, it is Prime Minister.
The Speaker asks that further questions to be placed on the notice paper.